So first, this is kind of just our story as it's so far written. We're going to kind of go through it, and I'm going to present a narrative, but it's really informal, and I look at this opportunity as a way for us getting to know people who are interested in farming, people who have knowledge sets that we don't, and there's also that horizontal cross-pollination that can happen, that even if our relationship doesn't grow from this, you can meet people around here that you may be neighbors with who are interested in growing food. So this is just a story, and I'm going to present a little bit of a narrative. Obviously, you can't get into a lot of technical aspects unless you're actually practicing it or seeing it at the sites. But I'm just going to kind of go through this narrative and begin with this quote by Mark Twain. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. So we're always talking about convention and kind of conformity and things like that, and doing what has always been done. This is really hard to see, so I guess this will be a good question. Does anyone know what that picture is right there? Yeah. So it's at the FDR Memorial. It's some bronze sculptures of people standing in a bread line, and just kind of as scene setter, a Gallup poll was taken last summer in 2013 asking what were the greatest worries or concerns of people in the U.S. 17% said the economy, 11% said debt, and 6% said employment and jobs. So one that was taken just this month is unemployment and jobs, 20%. Dissatisfaction with the government to fix some of these jobs, I presume, is 19%, and economy in general, 17%. And this slide right here shows three different measurements of unemployment. So you can kind of see it. It's a little bit hard, but this bottom one right here is the official unemployment. It's the U3 number, and then you can kind of see it's right around 6%. It's a little hard to see. There's another middle one right here, which is a U6 employment, and the U6 is looking at people who are part-time and want to go full-time, and that's around 12%. And the shadow stat says that the actual unemployment number, as we used to count it in the 90s, is up near 20%, where you look at people who are part-time, want to work full-time, people who are no longer able to collect unemployment benefits because their 99 weeks have run out. And so in some measurements, there's 1/5 of Americans right now are underemployed or unemployed. And of course, people have probably been hearing about the college loan debts. If you're like me, you went to school and accumulated some debts. Right now, the student debt level is $1.2 trillion, and the graduating class in 2012 had averaged $30,000 coming out of school. And another really scary thing is the 90-day delinquency rate, meaning people who can't pay back their student loans, is right now over 10%. And just to continue hammering some of these statistics down, over 4 million Americans ages 25-29 are not working in the U.S. Food inflation, according to this chart, is going up. And food insecurity based on the food assistance, food stamps program is at 46.2 million. And another question asked, how closely do you feel connected to your neighbors? So in the urban, it's about 25%. In the suburban, it's 21%. And in the rural countryside, it's about 37%. And does anyone know what this picture is from? It's really hard to see. But there's essentially a bunch of people down here. And I can give the slide deck afterwards. And they're running into a mall right after Black Friday, essentially, at midnight. And they're just running in, and it kind of is an example of just this consumerist-driven culture that we're living in, and that is really being emphasized within our culture and multimedia. And it, in some sense, I think it challenges what community actually is. And so communities that are built quickly using high promotion, big launches, and instant gratification tend to attract non-committal, fleeting members. So I guess the question is, how can we prosper in the face of insecurity with food, jobs, and debt? where there's educational bankruptcy and people who are going bankrupt to try to get an education to get opportunities, and with these community divisions going on. And one of my favorite thinkers, Albert Einstein, saying what insanity actually is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So which path to take? I really love this poem. I'm sure most people here know about it, but the path less traveled, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And just one more quote about Ralph Waldo Emerson is always do what you're afraid to do. Kind of force yourself to face your fears, whatever they are. So that's just a little bit of a scene setter. But before we, last week I asked the class that we were going to take it last Thursday, 3 questions, did a survey monkey and got about 17 responses. And the questions were, why are you interested in farming in one sentence? What are the top 3 things you need to do to start a farm? And what obstacles need to be overcome in order to start a farm? So for that first question in the food cloud, or in the word cloud, you can't really see it, but food is this major one right here, connected, grow, healthy. But this food one is really pronounced, which unfortunately can't see it as well. So that's why people are interested in farming. And if you get the slide deck, you can kind of see what some of the answers are related to that. And then what are the top 3 things you need to start a farm? So in the bottom right, you can see land, seeds, money, labor, time, community, experience. And these are some of the answers that are broken down. And then for the final question, it's what obstacles need to be overcome in order to start a farm? So you can see land, farming, time is a huge one, knowledge, and that financial aspect as well. So these are some of the answers. This one final one, is something that, just to read one of the responses, you have to break the mentality that farming is too time-consuming or meant for certain people. Everyone can farm. Whether you own 100 acres or a backyard or a simple window box, you can still grow food. Farming is an ancient practice and is making a comeback with urban farming, but only if you choose not to be lazy. Motivation is key in trying to start any project. And just to bring back good old Einstein again. So he said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, my life depended on it, I would use the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I knew the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. So I think oftentimes we're just going and we're not even asking ourselves what is the question that's really driving us, that's motivating us. So I'll go through our story about how we came together with the Liberty Route. And if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to jump in as well. So this guy is hard to see right here. This is Joey Bailey, a.k.a. El Jefe, a.k.a. the Rooster. He's got a shovel right there. And I went to the School of Public Policy at University of Maryland. And I met him. He was from West Virginia. He was in the Navy, came out, went undergrad West Virginia, and then studied School of Public Policy. And he and I would kind of talk sometimes over some beers and just kind of talk about the situation that I just kind of, the scene setter I brought up about concerns about the economy, concerns about food insecurity, about debt, and things like that. And we talk a lot about, this Great Depression, or that they're calling euphemistically the Great Recession in 2008 that is supposedly done, we're getting out of, and just this idea that it can't happen again, right? Of course, you're in college and you're trying to learn and you're trying to enjoy yourself, but in the back of your mind, you're accumulating a lot of debt and you're trying to figure out what's your next move. How are you going to get a job to actually change, to pay off the debt and do something that you love doing. And when you have a lot of debt, obviously, there's issues of just self-sufficiency and sovereignty and things like that. So how do you break the chains? And so, unfortunately, Joey's not here. He's going to Delfest, I guess, this weekend. It's a bluegrass festival in, or Hagerstown, I think. So he couldn't make it. He really wanted to come. I hope you all get to meet him. He's a funny guy. But he always talks about cooperation versus competition and how we need to work together and out-cooperate in anyone who's trying to out-compete us. And there's two ways of looking at it, where you can have a zero-sum game where your gain is my loss and my gain is your loss, or this idea of the harmony of interests, where the more we cooperate, the more there is beneficial gain. And I think KCDC is really symbolic of this, and I think everyone here taking an interest is very interested in this idea. So we said, what about trying to get a farm or something like that? And we have these romantic notions generally of what would we do if we went out and bought a farm, or at least some land that we could farm on outside of town. And some of these ideas of the bucolic farms and beautiful views are true. But then about those entrepreneurs, 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs who start businesses fail. So over 80% of people who are starting businesses oftentimes fail. So right there, you're already kind of taking a risk to even think about starting a small business. But then at the same time, this is pretty hard to see as well, is that between 2002 and 2007, U.S. farm count rose 4%, reversing a long-standing decline, essentially. So this is 1930. There's a spike during the last major economic depression, and it just kept going down less and less, and a lot of that has to do with mechanization and things like that. But you can see a slight uptick. So there is a movement to go back to some self-sufficiency and at least growing your own food. So at least from that, a lot of people would say, you are crazy for what you're trying to do. And I think the more people you meet who are interested in this, I think this is a much stronger movement than a lot of the mainstream ideas and conventional thinking are accepting. So Joey is from West Virginia and grew up with a few acres with his grandmother and family, and they grew ginseng. Has anyone ever used ginseng or grown ginseng or anything like that? I didn't myself when I first heard about ginseng. I wasn't really sure what it was. Generally used for medicinal medicine and things like that. But he spent some time in South Korea, and he said ginseng for an ounce of wild simulated ginseng, if you can move it to Korea or China, you can sell it at anywhere $500 to $1,000 an ounce, which is substantial. So it's hard to see these pictures, but so the idea was to possibly get some land and plant a lot of ginseng, and maybe that would be one way we can start generating revenue, and from that we can also grow a lot of food vegetables.
Wait, so his family grew ginseng like how long ago?
They're still growing it, but in a very small amount of ginseng.
They were growing it like when he was growing up.
Yeah, exactly. And so, wild simulated ginseng actually grows quite expansively through West Virginia as well.
And how did his parents or grandparents fund him to grow that?
I think, yeah.
So there's two types of ginseng. There's a ginseng that grows in China, and there's a ginseng that's grown native through Appalachia for thousands of years. And so in the last 200 years, there's been a lot of poaching. People were going through and collecting it, so it's actually endangered. But
it grows naturally.
Yeah, and a lot of the ginseng, it's used quite a lot in a lot of the Asian countries, but they grow it through hoop houses and growing gardens. And this is, you're actually growing it in the wild, and so the prices, obviously, there's a higher demand, which also increases the amount of poaching going on and people just pulling it out illegally. So we were talking about what are some of the ideal property characteristics. And so obviously we want to be within driving distance of DC, less than 100 miles. Need the water, sun, and soil are very important. This unrestricted zoning is also really important because there's a lot of homeowners associations, there's a lot of restrictions on a lot of land to even grow food or have chickens and things like that. Do we want a house, or do we want just an army tent and eventually build a house or something like that? And trying to get it under $200,000, obviously with a substantial bank loan if we take it. So him and I started going out in March 2012, driving a couple times a month out to West Virginia, out to Virginia, out to Maryland, just looking at properties and not even exactly sure where we're going on Zillow or Redfin and just trying to find something. And after we saw a couple properties that we were really interested in, we'd call them up and they said, well, this is already sold, and then we're like, okay, maybe we need a realtor to actually like kind of tell us where to go and to keep us on point. Lots of getting lost, but also a lot of fun driving out in that area. It's beautiful. So Joey, he's got the West Virginia connection, and he's hard to see there. And Soma, aka the Chanda, who's back there, they went to school together in Beckley, West Virginia, which is just southwest of Charleston. And so I met her through him. And then this guy, Jesse, aka the Badger, it's a really funny picture that unfortunately you can't see right now. He's holding up a ticket at Troubadour right near our place. Jesse met Joey at Summit Hills in Maryland. Do you want to just kind of mention how you guys met?
Yeah, sure. I guess I met Joey through a mutual friend, actually. So I worked here at Old City Farm and Guild for 5 years. And through Frank Asher, the owner, I met a guy also named Jesse. And one day Jesse asked me if I would come help him and his housemate Joey out with their garden. I was like, yeah, sure. So I went by and I gave him some tips on what to grow and how to plant it. And he sort of mentioned that they were thinking about getting some property, doing a farm, and I had been already thinking about trying to do this and trying to find some people who were doing something similar, and it just sort of evolved from there. He ended up sending me an email like a week later, and we sort of got together.
Yep. And then this guy, you can't really see either, but this is Jason Beach. Met him through School of Public Policy, also a fellow Peace Corps volunteer, returned Peace Corps volunteer, and that's how we got to know each other. And then Kyle, or Kylie, she and Jason knew each other from Peace Corps Mali. So once we had the 6 of us, and there were a couple other people there, we started meeting constantly about what type of land, and we'd go on these long land excursions on a Saturday or Sunday after a long work week. And we started hammering out some operations agreements and really discussing how we would actually make this ginseng idea come online and what are some of the other platforms of revenue we'd want to establish. But essentially we were financing this dream with these day jobs. I mean, we all have day jobs. You can kind of see the branding and logos of the different places we work. And that was and continues to be a very important aspect that allows us to at least do this. But the goal is to eventually get to the point where we're farming without the need for these day jobs, or our day job is the farm full-time. So in June 2012, gosh, it's almost 2 years, kind of crazy, we went to Deep Creek Lake for a retreat to kind of hammer out some mission statements and even the name Liberty Root at that time. And we went and saw the largest ginseng farm in, I guess, the lower 48 states or North America. Yeah. This guy, Larry Harding, has a huge, I don't know, hundreds of acre ginseng farm. And it's right near Deep Creek Lake, or about an hour away from it. And he's really hospitable. He showed us all around and bought a bunch of ginseng products. And about at that time, we realized that the way he was doing it at such a scale, he had to spray a lot of chemicals, and it just kind of dawned on us that the ginseng model may not be the centerpiece of our farming. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I just remember we were walking through, and it was, I don't know how many acres it was, but it's a huge farm, and just imagine inside a normal forest and basically ginseng just planted everywhere. And at one point, one of us asked, well, do you have to spray? I mean, because we're trying to not do that. And he basically said, oh, no way. I mean, there's no way you could grow this much.
So during that time, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Some sort of a pesticide and a fungicide.
Yeah.
Is it root?
Yeah, it's a small plant, goes really close to the forest floor, and then it's the root that's actually harvested. And each year the root gets a little bigger. And after about 7-8 years, that's when it's to the point where you can sell it. So it's a long-term investment. So if one of those plants dies because of a fungus or a pest, that's like, could be a couple $100. It's a big plant.
And then it forms berries every year and nuts that you can also plant or sell or trade and things like that. So Jesse, thank God, talked a little bit about some of his studies doing permaculture design, which is essentially setting up a harmonious system where all of the plants and the ecosystem are working in harmony to grow a lot of food. I don't know if you want to say a few words about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So it's sort of hard to explain permaculture. It's basically a set of design principles, and the goal is to reduce your inputs, whether it's fertilizers, chemicals, water, and increase your outputs, which is food and also less tangible things like community, friendship, all the other good stuff. And you're basically designing food systems that are based on either ancient food systems that a lot of the indigenous people have been doing, or and also natural ecosystems. So you're trying to conserve water, increase biodiversity on your property, increase soil fertility, which actually means increasing the amount of organic matter in the soil, and at the same time bringing people together to sort of share whatever you produce, whether it's extra water, extra food, materials.
So after that retreat, the actual structure of the business started taking shape, in the sense that we were looking a lot at education and DIY and open source principles, and making education a pretty central component of what we were trying to do, and bringing people together and bring them together through a community, have a bed and breakfast and an art space to try to bring all of that together onto the land, and grow a lot of food so we could diversify the model and have several different revenue streams coming in. So kind of jumping ahead, in December 2012, we made a bid on this house, and then we lost the bid, and it was pretty upsetting, pretty depressing at the time. It definitely shook our group, I think, a little bit, because it was December, and then we pretty much didn't do anything for the rest of December and January, and then we came back together in February. And at that, yeah.
He thought the whole venture was done. There was nothing to be done afterwards. We were breaking up as a group. We would have gone off thinking of burn up with each other.
Yeah, it was a heartbreaking experience.
We did come back together, and I think you would.
So,
were you looking at property that relied only on names, or were you looking at property where you could also go off-grid?
both, yeah, we were looking at everything. Even with no house, no sewage, no water or anything, or no like city water or anything like that.
You looked at other parts of West Virginia that are just as close?
We looked all around.
I have a friend who's a farmer there.
Yeah.
And her family's been there for a long time, and there's a couple of people who are interested in doing something like what you're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, we went as far west as Romney. I don't know if anyone's been to Romney, West Virginia, but if you 270 through Berkeley Springs, and then you just keep going west. Yeah, well, let's talk afterwards and put us in contact. That'd be great.
So the idea going in, you guys all thought that you guys wanted to do like a single crop, for-profit crop to fund the farm, or like that was kind of the agreed upon thing? Did you guys have different ideas about what you wanted?
Yeah, basically, leading up to sort of our first retreat where we all sort of got together as a group, the idea was ginseng was sort of going to be our cash crop, and that was going to be able to both pay into just a sustainable farm operation where we'd be growing different vegetables, fruit, berries, nuts, all that stuff, and still keeping ginseng as that cash crop, as a way of sort of our retirement fund or whatever for the property.
So what is the structure then? Because you mentioned doing like a B&B for revenue streams. Anybody
Yeah, well,
B&B before in your group?
yeah, we'll hit that, and just skipping ahead a little bit, we'll definitely answer that. And for the revenue stream, there's a lot of different aspects, but trying to bring people out there, trying to grow food and get self-sufficient on that, but then what's the model of actually trying to pay off a debt of like buying land? So ginseng was that answer at that time. Since then, we've definitely looked at, we have kind of a different model that we'll talk about. So after we lost that bid, we went to Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Wow, I got a little bit of dust on my throat. And we were sharecroppers in Shepherdstown for Woody's farm, this guy who was a Wall Street banker who bought, 50 acres or something like that with this huge house and a safe in the basement. And Joey found it on, was it Joey or you, found it on Craigslist for $250 a year. We could rent an acre, and he had water and everything set up for it. And from that acre, we could start growing and sharecropping.
Said he had water set up. That was another thing we went through.
Yeah.
It's because we started planting. We took a few weekends to till the ground. We went in, we put in all these seeds, and then the water wasn't working. So it's like, really? And of course, it was so hot last summer. The ground just dried up immediately. That was an exercise in futility, trying to get that water set up.
Yeah, and I think there are old cornfields and things like that. So it's pretty wide rolling hills, very limited trees.
Were any of you guys like experience? I know you said you worked here, and then the other friend you grew up on a farm. Or any of you experienced growing like large?
That I eat a lot of food.
Gardening here and there.
Like
yeah.
home gardening.
Yeah, home gardening generally. Yeah, so he's definitely the man with the most knowledge. But
Yeah, but even me,
yeah.
all together, we're basically learning every single time. We sit together every single time we try to plant something. It's just a giant learning experience.
Definitely.
Which our property at Woody's for that year definitely was.
Yeah. And even trying to put up a deer fence around the area, and it was like that real thin, almost like fish netting, nylon netting, and it lasted, but then it didn't last. So deer will generally get in there unless you build a really strong fence. So then it's unfortunate that you can't see this, but this is a house we saw in the spring of 2013 called Rock Ridge Farm. And as soon as we went there, we realized that it was pretty much everything we were looking for. It was within the 100 miles. It's in Morgan County, West Virginia, so which the entire county is unrestricted. It had half woods, half open field. It had a nice house with very well taken care of with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It had a pond on it. And and just beautiful views, because you can see Sleepy Creek and you can see Cacapon State Park on the other ridge. And so as soon as we saw that, we were like, this could be it, So we
There were 6 of us that day. Yeah, at that point there was a different girl in the group who's no longer with us, but the picture actually that's up here is, I took that picture, but it's everybody else just standing in a corner, because we'd all said, this is the house, we have to have this house. How do we convince the other 2 people that we have to have this house right now?
Yeah, which is actually that picture in the corner, if you can see. So like, what do we do? Oh my gosh, we actually see what we want. It's now within our grasp, and we just lost this other house, 4 months ago. So you realize this happens all the time when you're trying to do it. But it's also really scary, because we're trying to figure out, who's in and who's out, right? Who's going to run away, and who's going to go all in, because the way we're going to structure it, we're going to all be on the same house mortgage together. So through lots of meetings, a couple people, for good reason, didn't feel comfortable with signing their name on the 30-year mortgage and getting married with the other 5 people. So they dropped out, and so 6 of us on June 14th, 2013. You can see some hands with money up there. C&B is the bank that we went to. That's the parking lot. And it was literally the day of, we are exchanging like cash money. We brought an extra $1,000 that we had on us that we pulled out of our bank account, and just to get to that 20% down payment through an LLC commercial loan, essentially. But with all 6 of us being...
So are you leasing it back from the LLC to save on taxes?
So the idea is to have the property on one LLC and then operations on another LLC. Yeah, but it unfortunately, to get the longer term fixed or the adjustable interest rate with the best 7 years, that doesn't move for 7 years, and then it can only go up 1 percentage point up to 6 or 7%. To get that, we had to put $20,000, or we had to put $40,000 down to get it. So we pulled, the 6 of us, $40,000 down, and we bought this place, which was listed around $199,000, so right under the $200,000.
But there were other bids. So the house had been on the market for 11 days. We put our bid on the 13th day, and there were already 2 other bids on the house. So we were just waiting for the hammer to come down, like, you guys lost the bid. So we'd already had it once. Why not second time around? So it was a pretty epic day whenever it came in. He said he wanted us to get the bid.
Yeah.
It was a pretty awesome day, actually.
So once, we went through all the paperwork, we did the final walkthrough after the inspection, and we got the house, and it's like a paradigm has just shifted. Once you finally have an asset that you can try to work on that can generate revenue and that can generate prosperity for you, it is somewhat of a paradigm shift. And so just kind of doing an accounting of what we have with the liabilities, it's a 30-year mortgage, $1,200 a month. Operating expenses around $600 a month. We have limited equipment, limited time, and limited resources. And the assets, we have 15 acres of beautiful land. We have day jobs, I guess you could say, network of friends, and a lot of inspiration to make it happen. So when you think about it, though, a 30-year mortgage split 6 ways, is a couple $100 a month at that time, essentially, and an extra $30 of, or actually an extra $100 of operating expenses for electricity and the gas and things like that, for tools, for inputs. But even if the business fails, we're still also thinking we're still going to have a food producing part of land that is beautiful and that we can get to out of DC, which is always really nice. I don't know if you want to say anything about that. No. So we went through this honeymoon period where, we're sitting around the fire on our property, and we're landed gentry now, and just trying. And so we went through this really interesting period. The summer, it was a little too late to plant, and a lot of it was just going around and observing the land. This is an aerial view of the property, and really just trying to get to know the land better, get to know the different microclimates, and start planting. One challenge, though, is we all have day jobs, and we had, I like to call it day job dyslexia in the sense, and just have to embrace it, that everyone does have priorities to make their own rent payments here in DC and around DC, but ultimately we are trying to move forward in building this community out in West Virginia. And of course, there's all the paperwork, the contracts, accounting, and operating agreements and things like that we're going through and really working on hammering out. So for Soma's 30th birthday, we had a pretty big home warming party in July. In the fall, we put the place on Airbnb, and all during this time, trying to design the permaculture layout, and Jesse is definitely taking the lead on that. And this is kind of hard to see, but I'll play it anyway. It's just a short little video. Oh yeah, let me turn this up. Yeah, I'm sorry.
strapped a flashlight to the front of the rototiller.
Nice.
So we rented a rototiller at the just local hardware store and dug up the very rocky land from the former Rock Ridge farm and built 3 45-foot beds. And we put some garlic in it that should be coming out. It's already sprouting and it's going to be coming out in the summer. And so another part was looking at bringing in performance artists, musicians, things like that as a way to just bring in more community and also promote them through multimedia and things like that. So this guy, Andy Tuck of the Greens, came and did an acoustic show and brought some people through with Eventbrite, and he's a fantastic folk singer musician. And in December, we got some shiitake mushroom spores and cut down a log from our oak tree and inoculated the mushrooms. And so this past winter, we did a retreat just kind of looking at what are some of our immediate goals. Now, we had a loose mission and vision, and we really wanted to kind of tighten it up, trying to find funds to start our first spring planting, wanted to develop the website, social media, and the logo, do the crowdfunding to generate some funds for that initial spring planting, doing the Permaculture Zone 1 design, and then also just improving our systems and some of our protocols and project managers. So this is the vision that we have right now on our website. Liberty Roots' vision is a cultural renaissance pioneered by producing inclusive prosperity through locally driven, internationally networked permaculture homesteads, DIY maker communities, and creative solutions inspired by artistic mastery. We seek to achieve this vision by producing prosperity through nationally networked, locally driven permaculture homesteads, DIY maker communities, and artistry. And so that's still, we're still kind of refining it as well. And just more of a simple mission of to achieve that vision is building resilience through innovative food production, education, and community. So as we start looking at some of the things that we have accomplished in our first year, the website, social media, and logo are completed. I'm gonna try to play this. So we did an Indigo crowdfund campaign, and I'll just play it for us. I think you can see it decently enough.
What's up, good people? My name is Jason Beach.
My name is Soma Chanda.
My name is Evan Papp.
My name is Joey Bailey.
My name is Jesse Weiner.
Hi, I'm Kyle, co-founder of Liberty Root.
Welcome to Liberty Root Farm.
We're creating an awesome permaculture style homestead here in wild and wonderful West Virginia.
Soil, seeds, sustenance, compost.
We bought this property almost a year ago.
15 acres with a house.
Where we have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms.
Plenty of space to grow food, plenty of rooms for you to come and visit and stay and learn to grow food with us.
We're here to talk about raising funds for our first spring planting,
Which is our Zone 1 Liberty Garden.
Essentially what we're going to be doing, we have the keyhole beds coming out from the main patio. Certain keyholes can be focused on certain crops like tomatoes or carrots. One of the keyholes is basically going to branch out, and you'll have a path that sort of curves around on contour with the land towards the garlic beds, and all along that we can sort of have raspberries, and then obviously we'll have our little guild over there with the apricots and the herbs.
You gotta get back in D. You gotta get back on D. Successfully blocked it. If you look around this property, there are a lot of cold trails of a lot of different types of wildlife.
We also have a ton of deer that come through here, so a deer fence is really vital to us being able to provide a lot of good food for great people coming to visit this place.
The fence is basically going to go from the corner of the house, up the driveway, right to where the camera is right now, and across to protect all of our beautiful fruit trees and to protect our new Liberty Root garden.
Ultimately, you want to get everyone, all of our friends, all of our family, get involved with this property, this project.
which is going to be happening 6 to 8 weeks from today.
What we're asking for you is to please donate your time, money, or even tools to help us get this Zone 1 garden and deer fence completed.
We'd love to have you guys come out here and help us plant and have fun and make merriment.
Feed you delicious food, and you can listen to some live music and really get to experience what Liberty Root is all about.
Sharing it back with the community that we're growing it in.
We want to try to give you food.
But the crowdfund video we did on Indiegogo, how many people have done a crowdfund before? What was it for?
It was to build a kitchen to teach children how to cook their own food.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's a really interesting process to go through to try to generate revenue and in a way to make it as community focused and networked as possible. And we were also trying to provide incentives that it wasn't just giving us money, but you were going to be coming out to the farm and you're buying into the membership. So since that time, we have been working on putting up this huge 700-foot, 8-foot tall deer fence around the Zone 1 garden to keep the deers out. And we've been doing that the last several weekends since late April, early May.
Did you run a line of predator urine around it?
Well, we're going to put it up first, and
that helps.
We're going to need a lot of it for 700 feet.
Yeah, I know.
Get a lot of dogs out there or something. Yeah, definitely. Deers are a huge issue out there. And some of the year one stats, we planted these 45-foot beds, inoculated oak logs, held a couple events, hosted over 50 guests, raised $7,000 for our first crowdfund, and of course, buying the property and getting 6 people committed to that is an achievement in itself. But at the same time, we are doing things a little bit backwards and just kind of looking at our Liberty Root year one reflections. Buying the land before the business is set. Generally not advisable, but so far we're doing it. We're doing it. 6 individuals on a mortgage, that's always going to have some issues that are going to come up. Just being weekend farmers is going to have its own difficulties. Some people work on the weekends so they can be out there during the week. But we also know everyone's searching for community, and the country and the city are inherently attracted to one another. I mean, I love living in the city. I love the culture of the city, but I think I'm like many people, really like to get outside of the city and really enjoy it. Beautiful rural areas. And there is a day job necessity. And there, I think, is an inherent value in property, and I think that value is only preceded by the amount of community that you can assemble that can improve upon that property. And I think DIY is one key to unlocking the property's potential. And this idea of the 80-20 customer equation, where 80% of your business is going to be from 20% of your customers. And always look at guests as a blessing is another important thing. Persistence, cooperation, outcompeting competition, and the last one is obviously the most important. To run a financially viable business, you have to generate enough revenue to make it happen. And so some of our goals for year 2 is continuing education. That's going to be lifelong. Greater financial transparency using accountants. Just tightening up the policy, the strategy, the mission, and the vision. Zone 1 garden expansion, tool procurement, house maintenance, campground we're building out in the back, and continue growing the community. So I'm just going to go through some more advice. It's been a huge grind. Obviously, you're tired from your day jobs, and you come back, and sometimes you just want to veg out and do nothing. But we're meeting still once a week, and then we're on the weekends, oftentimes 2-3 times a month, out there trying to make this happen. But don't take counsel of your fears. Failure is going to happen. It's how you learn from that, and definitely you're going to need the community, so embrace it. And this idea of instant gratification that we're sold constantly in America, I think, is just a complete lie. Gratification is proportional to what you put into it. The more work you put into it, the more gratification. And I think in some sense this false idea of instant gratification really affects the community's mind to think long term and to think about actually working and creating and learning and discovering things. And ultimately, action. You have to act. I mean, we can talk all day, we can sit back and criticize and complain, but it's what's going to really change things and set things into motion is action, and to have the guts to take the jump even if you're scared shitless. So what is the question? That continues to be the question. So I'm just going to go through some resources and partnerships for people to kind of consider. You probably know a lot of these, and then we can just open up to a discussion. And we're almost done with 113 slides. We're 95 way through. So Polyface, has anyone heard of Polyface Farms? They're the Omnivore's Dilemma. Michael Pollan wrote about them. I actually got to go check them out in 2007 for a day that they just opened up their farm. They offer internships. They're obviously extremely competitive, and they can lead into full-time one-year apprenticeships. They also have network farms that you can also apprentice with. Yeah.
Where is it located?
It's in Stanton, Virginia. So you just take 81 all the way down, and then you hit Stanton. It's about five-hour drive from here, 4 or 5 hours. Something I'm going to continue looking into is this wolfing, worldwide opportunities on organic farms. It's essentially where you can go stay on a farm for free, put in some labor, and you can learn their model and learn what they're doing while you're also getting fed. It's international, and there's also tons of wolfing farms all around here. And I think for all of us in the Liberty group, it's a great opportunity to also just see new models and also continue networking and expanding the community.
Have you done some?
I have not, actually. Has anyone here done wolfing? Yeah. Where?
At Germany, I did a mushroom farm.
Awesome.
And then France.
Did you do goat France,
It
goat
was like
cheese?
it was cheese. It was like 2002.
Yeah. Awesome. And where were you?
In New Zealand.
Cool. What were they growing?
It was a sheep farm. It was mostly like wool processing. So.
Cool. Of course, there's the Master Gardener training. Universities offer it. And this is a website, Resilient Communities. They give us a lot of good ideas about ways, looking at different ways to just build community and make it more resilient through new technologies and DIY.
Shareable's a good resource.
Shareable,
Yeah.
definitely. And Paul Wheaton on permaculture. He's an administrator of one of the most largest educational forums on permaculture. He has tons of good ideas. He has a daily email that comes out. The National Farmers Coalition that looks at ways to mobilize and engage young farmers. George Mason just came out with a permaculture design course for a week at a time. You're starting to see these other universities embrace it.
He has one, and so does Maryland.
Yeah, excellent. I didn't know about that. The University of Maryland, I saw this one with the Future Harvest, through Future Harvest.
Sustainability program.
Yeah, it's great. Chesapeake Forest Gardens, it's another permaculture design course. Eco City Farms, I really think their model is dynamic. Has anyone been out there? It's in Hyattsville. It's really cool. They just expanded to a new farm in Bladensburg, and they're really focusing on teaching youth farming, nutrition, and looking at people who are food insecure to try to empower them as well.
Anybody eating at Busboys and Poets?
Yeah.
Eco City supplies them food.
And Arcadia has their bus that they get all their stuff from the farm out at Mount Vernon.
Yeah, it's awesome. Neighborhood Farm Initiative, I've taken a couple classes from. There's some really good people in there. They also have a plot near Fort Totten. Community gardens, I'm sure people around here have been on them. There's this huge Bright Farms that is opening up 100,000 square foot hoop house, greenhouse just in Southeast. That's going to be supplying food directly to Giant.
Is that the one the mayor talked about? There was like 5,000 acres or some ridiculous amount?
It's like 100,000 square foot. I'm not sure how many acres they set aside.
When he said what the amount was, we were all sitting there going, where?
Yeah. So in the underdeveloped part of DC, or at least underfinanced part.
Hush,
yeah.
hush. They're not really talking about it much.
Well, I guess I think it's supposed to go online this summer. Like they've been building it for the last year. Common Good City Farm is just around the corner. It's another great opportunity. City Blossoms, nonprofit, working to improve the community, engage in creative green spaces. DC Greens is another one where we have friends at. And there's the farmers market scene has exploded in DC. Just go talk to when you're at a farmers market. Go talk to farmers. A lot of them
support ours. June 4th is our opening day. It's all direct local product produced, and we give double coupons for Snap and Wick and other people like that. It's
great.
Really cool. It's in right in Hyattsville.
Great. So we can even like after this on the email listserv, we can kind of share emails and talk a little bit about it. And farmers are so interested in talking about what they're doing and bringing you out to their farm and to kind of show different methods. So if you just strike up conversations half the time, they'll be inviting you out while they're handing you free food from their table.
Yeah, taking good care.
Farmers are good people to make your friend.
Yeah, always.
Yep, they do.
And of course, you're always welcome to come out to West Virginia and do some camping or anything else, or help us try to do what we're trying to do and see where we can cooperate most. So.
Yeah, I wish you guys could have seen the pictures because just see our place, but too bad it doesn't work out.
Yeah. So that's our story about how we're starting a farm. It's still really early in the process.
Still starting a farm.
We're still, there's never going to be an end to the learning curve, I think. Yeah.
I have a question about the zoning issue. So there's no zoning where you happen to be, so you can have a campground, you can have a...
Totally understand.
I mean, the B&B is just Airbnb at the moment, but is the...
You guys are rural.
Is the thought to have
for zoning?
Yeah.
Your own running B&B or...
We're definitely looking at trying to... So the model, I didn't articulate as well as I could have, is having three revenue platforms, essentially. One, growing the food through the permaculture design, and then that food comes and we're going to do farm-to-table food service with the bed and breakfast, and then have an event space where people can come out and do educational workshops, have retreats, or if we're trying to promote artists and things like that. And then we can also sell and monetize and promote their work as well, is another way to do it. But the unrestricted aspect, Morgan County, West Virginia, is all unrestricted. So we went to a lot of different places, and you'd see beautiful barn and beautiful setup, but you couldn't do commercial farming on it. Or you would have to go through the homeowners association, keep your barn painted red or something like that. We can put up campgrounds, we can tear things down, put things up. We still need business licenses, but it allows for a lot of flexibility. Yeah.
So do you have to, you really kind of have to go out to West Virginia to be able to find the unrestricted land, or was it sort of in pockets?
It's interesting that Morgan County is all unrestricted. So, and that's Berkeley Springs, which is you go 270 to 70, and right before it hits 64 is Berkeley Springs. Is a beautiful town. Yeah. Most other places have a lot of restrictions, but at the same point, Prince George's County is opening up to having chickens and things like that. So
and DC is too.
Things are changing.
And you can type unrestricted into Zillow and Russian, and you'll get hits on that. But the best thing, actually, our realtor was awesome. She's still a friend with us now. She was really great about finding us unrestricted and how much land we wanted, type of land we wanted. She was a rock star when it came to. I can't imagine how many miles she put on the star, meeting us in the most random places. And the addresses listed on those real estate listings are not the right addresses. It's whatever Google Maps thinks is the address. So when you go to the details at the bottom of the listing, it'll be like, oh, take the second mud lane to your left, whatever. All these really obscure directions to get there. So she was about to. If you want her name, give it to her.
So how has it been pro or con to have bought a place with a house in terms of finance and it's money sink, and in terms of just convenience, probably to have you're going back and forth.
Oh man, that was a huge debate whether or not we wanted the land and then build the house. We even looked up the prefab homes that you can get put together really quickly, and then we're like, well, if we get really cheap land, then we can get $100,000 house. And we went through all kinds of different combinations of what we could do, but ultimately, I think having the house was easier because trying to build a house just gives you more decisions that you need to make on what you want that house to be. So trying to find someplace that had a house was easier, and then if you have to fix stuff later, you can kind of budget that in.
And I mean, there was a few properties that we looked at that had a house, but it was probably going to need a lot of work. So a big appeal to this spot was, one, the property was pretty much exactly what we were looking for. Even though, like, at the time, I personally was sort of against getting a place with the house, because I figured a lot less money, just get the property, and we'll just camp until we have enough money. And then, but a big part of that is the properties that don't have houses, they also don't have no plumbing, no
sewage,
electricity,
water,
nothing. And they were still pretty expensive. So, and then I think we all saw huge opportunity to rent the place out and to immediately start doing that as a revenue stream. So that's why one of the first things we did was signed up for Airbnb, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, but that's been awesome.
And Airbnb has just been a really great way to get people to connect with us. We've had repeat guests because they just love that area. They love the land. They love being able to walk out and breathe fresh air. So we've got a lot of repeat customers just based on where we were and what the property was, which is nice. It's its own draw.
You were smart to do the house.
Yeah.
Because when you're tired and you want to take a shower, you want to bed to
you have
sleep
to get
in.
wells dug because you need water.
Yeah.
There were way too many other factors that you would have to consider if you were going to try to build a house.
What was?
Wondering, so what you folks are trying to do, how much do things like soil, exposure, terrain matter? Or is that kind of isolated off as appropriate?
Yeah, so we'd like to use as little water from the well as possible. And that's a big part of permaculture, is basically utilizing what you have. It's pretty wet there. We get some good rain. And I'm not sure about this, but we're sort of on this ridge, and it sort of appears that when we get some of these storms, we sort of don't get the brunt of the force. So there's a lot of opportunity to catch water. And one of the things that's really good to look for if you're looking for property, whether you're going to have a house or not, is looking for south-facing slopes, areas where you can, one of the big permaculture technique is using a series of berms and swales to catch water as it flows down. So actually, down the slope from our property, our neighbor, really awesome guy, has 2 or 3 huge ponds, and a lot of that is actually fed from just the runoff from our property. So you have amazing potential to catch water on your property without worrying about irrigation. The biggest thing that I think we're going to have to probably irrigate is once we start sort of mass growing, starting seeds. That's the most important part.
But then we're looking into like rain barrels with drip irrigation systems, anything to, not use the well water, try to keep as much water in the ground.
Well, they've got those bladders now that'll hold 5,000 gallons. So.
And the soil obviously is important, but we're always going to be trying to build up the topsoil and just trying to continue to put cover crops and things like that to increase the fertility and organic matter.
Somebody else had a question.
Oh, actually, really, have you started digging the swales yet?
Yeah.
So describe that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tilling, the rototilling. So we rototilled these 3 giant beds where we decided we were going to do garlic and then eventually maybe do a hoop house on top of. And it's, like I said, the farm is called Rock Ridge. It is on a ridge, and there are lots of rocks. And shale is the main rock there. So a big part of tilling it was like you couldn't just go over it. We had to have people running behind the tiller to pick out rocks. And pretty much every foot it was hitting some huge rocks. So a big part of sort of we're transitioning into doing our Zone 1 garden, which in permaculture that's sort of the zone right around the house. And we're going to be doing sheep mulching and basically no-till methods to basically build up that soil. But yeah, it's actually is decent soil. It's not. But yeah, our first couple. I think we dug a couple holes when we went there the first time just to check it out. It was like, this is rocky, but it was not nearly as bad as the property that we were renting, that it had corn on it for 200 years or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's...
But it's not as good as the first place we put a bid on, was like perfect soil you could possibly imagine.
What was grown on the property before you guys purchased?
Actually, when we went in to view the property the first time, we went into the basement, and I guess they'd been doing a lot of canning, because there were canned peaches, tomatoes, pickles, all kinds of stuff from like the 70s. Yeah, he has tons of fruit trees.
Pretty big
apples,
asparagus patches.
Wow.
Yeah, huge patch of lavender, but then, you know, he was growing tomatoes, what else, cucumbers, fresh squash.
Yeah.
General garden variety.
But not on a massive scale. The front area of the property that we're going to sort of mix into with our own plantings has several varieties of apple trees, peach trees.
Yeah, not mass produced. And so I mean, it's more of a house with land that we're converting into a farm, and it's becoming our farm.
You should be proud of what you've accomplished so far. People don't realize how much hard work this is until they have to do it.
Yeah. And it's life is not a sprint; it's a marathon that you really need to focus on, and that's what if you're looking years down the road, it becomes much easier to get there. If you're not looking, I need to be there next year, which is really hard to do because we live in a very transient times when people are just trying to find work and day jobs, and a lot of us in DC are away from homes and come here from somewhere else. So.
And I mean, even just a few months ago, like the group of us, we had a pretty stressful time, and we were kind of at each other's throats, and we just sat down, had a few beers, and took a step back and said, look at how much we've done in a year.
You gotta keep sight of that.
You really have to, because if you don't, the day-to-day stuff can stress you out and really break you down. So you have to keep, like this marathon, you have to keep sight of your end goal, and it's really far away. So any stress you have now can and will be solved.
Are you guys treating anything within the deer fence as like the zone 1 area?
Yeah, the whole.
Yeah, so sort of the way we have it set up now, for those of you who don't know, in permaculture terms, basically the zones are measured by how often you basically visit that part of your property. So a path that you have to walk from your car to the house, that's zone 1. Some might even call it zone 0 because you're seeing that every day. For us, it's sort of different because since we're still weekenders, technically there really isn't a zone 0 or zone 1. But yeah, so basically the very front of the property is going to be our zone 1, and then the fence extends out pretty far, a few hundred feet, and then that's where sort of the apple trees and the peach trees are, and pear trees, and that's sort of going to be our zone 2, zone 3, once we start getting into fruit trees, nut trees, berry bushes, stuff that don't have to go see every day, but you know, maybe once every couple weeks to weed a little bit.
Are there enough trees on the property already? Are you going to be introducing more?
Oh yeah, we're going to be introducing, actually this fall, we're planning on doing serious fruit and nut trees. There's just a few there now, and they doesn't look like they've been really taken care of for the last 5 years or so. The grass is sort of growing all the way up to the trunks. Haven't been pruned in a while, but so one of our first things we did was we cleared the grass away from the base of the tree. Pruned it back, planted daffodils around a couple of them that sort of act as a barrier so the grass doesn't come in.
And the deer don't like the daffodils.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have plans in terms of like the food production aspect for direct marketing, or are you still, is that too far out? Or TSA?
I mean, we've talked about it, and we've worked in nurseries, and we've worked at farmers markets, and right now I think the model is trying to get people out there to really enjoy the space, and then feed them when they're there with the food that we're growing, and then have them leave with food once we start getting to the point where we're growing surplus, and then from that you can create CSAs, community supported agriculture, and right now we're just it's going to take a couple years to really start growing enough food that we can be feeding people every time they come out and start pickling it and things like that.
And do any of you have a sense of when you want to transition from your day job to the Is there?
Yesterday.
Do you have like a time frame, any of you, or is it just sort of
a strategic plan?
I would say 3 to 5 years it should be paying for itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you
3 to 4 years as far as it's paying for itself and people to work there. I feel like we could probably break even within the next 2 to 3 years, but we won't be able to pay anybody to do anything. We won't be able to quit our jobs to do anything.
Are you guys going out, like, what percentage, like, are you going out there every weekend? And, like, how much are you, like, sort of divvying up, like, who's doing, like, admin and bills and things like that? Or how are you, like, how are you dealing with that, like, kind of division of labor?
Evan is actually doing a lot of the social media, well, he's doing a lot of the videography and the media. He put together the video for the crowdfunding. Jesse is our agricultural guru. But he also does a lot of Facebooking. Joey, El Jefe, he does a lot of research, actually. He spends a lot of his day researching the different, because West Virginia will offer you a lot of grants to put up hoop houses, to do a lot of farming work. There's a lot of grants that you can get through USDA or the one?
NRCS.
NRCS. So Joey does a lot of research on that, which is really great because that takes a lot of time. Kyle has been doing our accounting and bookkeeping. She was a finance major, so that's really what she's into. But we definitely need a third-party accountant. So if anybody starts a business, just side note, get a third-party accountant because money just can cause a lot of tension in a group. And if you own a business with somebody and one person's the one dealing with the money, you don't want to have that tension if you're not getting the information you want. So third-party accountant, it's definitely a plus. Me. Me. I'm the face of it. Just kidding. I did a lot of work on the crowdfunding. I tried to put together most of the campaign with some help on the wording, the language, and I do whatever everybody else tells me to do. I don't really have a specific role, I don't think.
Our roles are definitely evolving over time. And it's something we sort of always have to, like Evan said, we try to meet every week, and we're constantly trying to check ourselves and make sure that everyone's putting in the same effort. And there's going to be times where Evan has a week that he's really stressed out, isn't able to put in this much energy, and the same thing's going to happen to me 2 weeks down the road. So I think one of the hardest things has been sort of organizing so that we can all be out there as much as possible at the same time. And at the same time, being able to come away with that and being able to say, okay, Evan, go do this, I'm going to do that, I go do this. But it's constantly evolving.
But the weekly meetings are really a great way for everybody to come together and say what they've been doing and just get a feel for what's happened over the last week, over the last month.
And I would say we go out like 2 to 3 times a month. Excuse me. And to be honest, it's going out there is the most peaceful thing. It's like you just get away from all the stresses of the work week, and in some ways it's really difficult to come back to DC because you're out there and you're just working and everything else dissolves and you're just focusing on the task at hand, and it's actually very therapeutic. But yeah, probably 2 to 3 times a month we get out there on average. But then sometimes we're traveling and we're out for 3 weeks or something like that too, so other people have to step it up at that time.
So is the plan eventually to ostracate them, or just to keep this for long? Because you mentioned hiring people in a few years, so that you like will continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, I love farming, but I'm a scientist during the day, farmer by night. So I would love to think that I would still be doing science at some point during all of this and for the future. Because I love what I do. It's just bureaucracy that gets to me. So I still love the science, and I want to keep doing science. So the idea was at first to get a groundskeeper because getting there on the weekends was getting a little bit hard at times. And now the guys have been going out there probably every weekend to work on this massive deer fence. So they're putting in tons of hours. But I've been overseas for the last few weeks for work, so I haven't been there. And I mean, having a groundskeeper there to look after stuff during the week when we can't get out there would be really helpful. So maybe one day.
One of the biggest things, you know, we keep mentioning permaculture, but one of the biggest aspects of permaculture is reducing labor. And conventional agriculture is extremely labor intensive if you're using manual tools. And it requires you to go out there every day to make sure everything's getting water, make sure weeds aren't popping up. And a big part of permaculture is actually welcoming a lot of the weeds, which can be used as a green mulch, which can be used as food. Harvesting water without, you know, plastic tubing, so you basically don't have to worry about, oh crap, there's a timer on. So like me personally, I plan on moving out there within the next couple of years. And spending the majority of my time there. But I think with all of us, we all have sort of our other visions, and this is something that we've sort of come collectively to focus energy on. But I think what we're trying to show is that you don't necessarily need to give everything up to focus on farming, especially incorporating a lot of these new permaculture, sustainable agriculture practices.
Where do farm animals fit on your radar?
They're definitely on there.
Yeah. Is it impossible without a permanent presence there, or do you think that's a requirement? Or
that's a really good question.
We've got predators out there.
Yeah, I think definitely it's not on our to-do list for the next probably year or two. And even bees. Actually, Soma and I just went in and got a honeybee hive. We're actually going to pick it up at 6:30 tomorrow morning. And we're actually going to keep it at my place in Kensington. And one of the ideas was to actually do bees there this year. And my thing was this will be my first time and all of our first time with honeybees, which are fairly as low maintenance as it gets with animals. But yeah, I think we wanted to sort of have it close by so we can nurture them. And like she mentioned, there are predators out there, so something like chickens. And even goats, which we've been talking about, which definitely be subject to IOBs.
Yeah, but definitely want to get them. Yeah, but you do need we'll need full-time presence before that can happen. Oh, great. Yeah, sure.
Do you know anybody else who's tried a model like yours?
So just getting online, there's this huge. And just the amount of people that are interested in this topic, I think there's a lot of people, and the idea of exchanging labor and learning along the way is just growing, especially in these economic times where people have time, but maybe not have money and things like that. But this food to table bed and breakfast with event, entertainment space, educational space, I think, is a model that you can scale up, and I think. It is something that I see long term, and if not just living there, but opening up this model in other places as well. So, definitely think it's viable. Yeah. Well, we can hang around and answer any other questions, but really appreciate your attention, and we'd love to see you out there. And hit us up on email, and we'll respond. And we can also collaborate in DC a lot as well. If you have cool things going on, or if you have great ideas, we'd love to hear them. So, thank you.
Also, I'm turning 30 again. We're having another party.